Hello everybody. Today we will talking about active listening and empathic responding. Okay, here we are talking about elements of listening. So success of listening depends on all four elements, which are hearing, which is a physiological process. Second, filtering out distractions. If there is any distraction, that should be avoided or removed. This will allow you to focus and concentrate on message. Interpreting, assigning meaning, decoding includes verbal and non-verbal cues, as we said in previous chapters before. And finally, we have recalling, which means remembering the information later. اوكي اذا هدول هم العناصر الاربعه اللي بتهمنا بالlistening well اللي هي حكيناهم الهيرنج filtering اذا في اي خلينا نحكي مصادر تشتت الفهم اوكي كيف نعمل interpreting للكيوز مثلا سواء كانت verbal او non verbal and finally اننا نستطيع نتذكر المعلومات لاحقا. اوكي Here we're talking about listening to patients, which means trying to understand their thoughts and feelings. Okay, we should focus on both thoughts as well as their feelings. Okay, we have something called empathic communication, which means to understand, okay, or the understanding you have conveyed back to patients so they realize that you do understand, okay? So you do they will know that you do understand them, okay, and you do understand their feelings also. Patient feelings must be accepted without judgment as to being right or wrong. So you don't have to judge on other people or patients as being right or wrong, but rather you have to accept their feelings as it is. Here in this slide, we are talking about effective communication, which means speaking or can be achieved by speaking clearly and forcefully and having an effect on others and to be a good listener at the same time. So it is a critical part of the communication, most difficult to learn. So it is not easy to learn how to be a good listener. It is easier to know how to speak clearly. Okay, so these two main points are needed for the effective communication. Okay, another important point during the effective communication is to provide your patients with the sense that you are understand their feelings, okay? So this means that you should make the patients feel that they are understood and you are understanding their thoughts and their feelings as well. Okay, what is the importance of listening in the feedback loop? As the receiver of messages and as a pharmacist, we receive daily messages from patients. So, our ability to listen well influences the accuracy with which we are able to decode messages in a way that is congruent with the patient's intended message. Okay, so how we receive the message by active listening will affect the accuracy of the message itself and will make the patient feel that his intended message was sent appropriately. يعني خلينا نحكي بالعربي إنه إحنا يوميا طبعا كصيادلة بنتلقى مسج أثناء المحادثة مع المريض، فكل ما كان عندنا قابلية إن نستمع أحسن للمريض فهذا بيخلينا إن نحصل على المعلومة الصح الدقيقة منه، وكمان هذا الحكي بيخلينا نحصل على المعلومة اللي هو فعلا بيقصدها المريض. Okay, ability to convey your understanding back to the patient will affect the degree to which they feel understood and cared for. So it is an important point to convey the right message or the right feedback for the patient so he can know and understand and feel that you do understand him well. If you fail to understand the patient, this can be uncovered and clarified in the feedback process. For example, suppose that you fail as a pharmacist to understand the message from the patient, then by repeating the message again in the feedback process, then if there is something that was unclear or uncovered, then you will discover that and you will understand it again from the patient. يعني بمعنى آخر كل ما كان عندك قابلية إنك ترجع المعلومة اللي حكالك إياها المريض بعملية الفيدباك، كل ما كان بيشعر المريض إنك أنت you do understand him. أوكي، وهي نقطة كثير مهمة. وإذا صار في خلينا نحكي لبس أو سوء فهم، أنت ما فهمت على المريض أثناء إرساله للمسج أثناء الكوميونيكيشن، فبعملية الفيدباك لما ترجع له هالمسج إنه تحكي له أنا فهمت منك كذا وكذا، أنت بتقدر تعرف إذا في معلومة مثلا ما كانت واضحة وتستوضحها مرة ثانية من المريض. So, here in this slide we are talking about factors that impact listening. So, beside the communication barriers, there are some communication habits that can interfere with your ability to listen well. For example, we have number one, multitasking. So, if the pharmacist is so busy, so this will affect the listening. Second, planning ahead to what you will say next. So, if you are talking about many points during the talk or during the communication, and you are heading from one point to another before completing that point, so this will of course affect the listening. Third, jumping to conclusions before patients have completed their message. For example, if the patient is talking about something, he is trying to convey a message for you, and you have jumped to the conclusion suddenly, then this will also affect the listening. Number four, focusing only on content, listening with ears only. This means that you are hearing rather than listening well, okay? So you do not understand what he is saying. You are just hearing to what he is saying. Your perceptions, if your perception is something, or if there is something wrong with your perception to what he is said, to what he is saying, then this will also affect the listening. And finally, communicating in stereotyped ways. For example, if you have a stereotype toward some patients, okay, this will we will talk about this later in the next chapters in details. But here I mean, if you have the stereotype toward some patients, this will affect the listening that we want. طبعا المقصود هون بالstereotyped ways إنه الواحد بيكون بيحكم على أشخاص من نقطة معينة من دون ما يفهمهم، من دون ما يعمل communication معهم، بناء على شكلهم الخارجي أو بناء على مثلا كرايتيريا موجودة فيهم، كأنك تأخذ حكم عام مثلا على الناس دائما مثلا اللي عاملين وشم على إيدهم بإنه بتنظر لهم نفس النظرة. تمام، هاي المقصود فيها. Okay. Listening well involves understanding both the content and the feeling. So you don't have to separate between the content and the feeling. Both should be understood by the receiver of the message, who is the pharmacist. Skills that are useful in effective listening include summarizing, paraphrasing, empathic, responding. We will discuss each point in the next slides. Okay. Summarizing. What is meant by summarizing? Summarize the critical pieces of information provided by the patient. Okay, it's a clear point. Summarizing allows you to verify that you understand accurately and allows the patient to add new information that may have been forgotten. يعني مثلا إذا أنت رجعت عملت سمري للإشي اللي حكاه المريض، هاد إذا في عندك إذا في missing point ما حكاه المريض رح يرجع يحكي لك مثلا إنه وكمان هيك 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 هيك، يعني رح يضيفها. أوكي، يعني إحنا لما نلخص بنكتشف إذا في missing point by the patient. طبعا summarizing is important to overcome language barrier. إذا كان في عنا أي language مشكلة بين الطرفين، فلما تعمل summarizing برضو بتبين للمريض إنه فعلا إنه هذا فهم علي أنا شو قصدت، حتى لو كان في مشاكل بالlanguage. Now, paraphrasing. What is meant by paraphrasing? You attempt to convey back to the patient the essence of what he or she has just said. يعني إنك تعيد اللي هو حكى. بيختلف شوي عن السمري، إنه هنا أنت ما بتعمل زي ملخص بتعيده نفسه، لكن بس خلينا نحكي بلغتك الخاصة. Paraphrasing condenses aspects of content as well as some superficial recognition of the patient's attitude or feelings. يعني لما أنت بتعمل paraphrasing صح أنت بتعيد الكونتنتس اللي حكاها، لكن في معاها مع الكونتنت البيشنت الاتيتيودز والفيلينج، مشاعره اللي هو حملها أنت بترد تعيد له إياها، لكن بتشعره أنك أنت فاهمها. Okay, here we will take some examples of paraphrasing, which is the repetition of the patient message but in our words. For example, patient number 1, I don't know about my doctor. One time I go to him and he is as nice as he can be. The next time he is so rude, I swear I will not go back again. So what is the reply of the patient, of the pharmacist? The pharmacist says that he seems to be very inconsistent. So this is a paraphrasing of that the doctor is sometimes he is nice and sometimes he is rude, but in our words or in another words. Patient number 2, or example number 2, the patient says, I'm glad moved into the retirement village. Every day there is something new to do. There are always lots of things going on. I am never bored. So the pharmacist reply, so there are a lot of activities to choose from. So here is a paraphrasing of the words that the patient said before. In paraphrasing, note that there is a superficial recognition of the patient's attitude or feelings. So you do not go deeply in their feelings, just recognition of some attitudes or superficial, as we said, attitudes or feelings of the patients. Okay. يعني احنا ما خلينا نحكي لما نعيد كلامهم اوكي بالبارافريزنج تبعنا بيكون في بعض خلينا نحكي انه الفيلينجز محمولة بكلامنا لكن مش فايتين فيها بشكل كبير. Here in this next slide we are talking about empathic responding, okay, which means the reflection of feeling. This can be achieved verbally and non-verbally. So verbally, you convey your understanding of the essence and emotional meaning of another person's communication. Okay, so هون أنت بتعيد للمريض الحكي اللي حكاه، أوكي، وشو فهمت عليه، أوكي، طبعا وبحكيك معه بيكون فيه emotions و feelings اللي هو قصد إنه يوصل لك إياها. Non-verbal communication that shows caring and attention to the patient بيكون في إشي non-verbally مثلا تكون ممكن cues بتبين للمريض إنه أنت مهتم لأمره وأنت شاعر شعوره اللي هو حاب يوصل لك إياه. Okay, so what is the difference between an empathic and a paraphrase? Empathy serves primarily as a reflection of the patient's feeling rather than focusing on the content of the communication. يعني في مع الإعادة أو في مع البارافريزنج بيكون في معاها إيش؟ إنه أنت تشعره إنك شاعر شعوره، تمام؟ There are some examples. For example, patient number 3, I don't know about my doctor. One time I go to him and he is as nice as he can be. The next time he is so rude, I swear I will not go back again. So the reply by the pharmacist will be, if he is paraphrasing, he seems to be very inconsistent, as we said in the previous slide. But if there is an empathic response, then it will be, you seem to feel uncomfortable going to see him if you never know what to expect. هنا عادلنا الكلام حكى إنه في inconsistency، أوكي، لأنك مش عارف شو رح يصير أو مش متوقع شو رح يعني يكون رد فعله، لكن أنت هون شاعر uncomfortable، فهون كان في عنا إعادة للمحتوى، أوكي، زي paraphrasing، زائد إنه إحنا شاعرين شعورك إنك أنت uncomfortable. Okay. Another example, which is the same example that we discussed previously in the slides. Patient number 4, I'm so glad I moved into the retirement village. Every day there is something new to do. There are always lots of things going on. I'm never bored. So the pharmacist says, if he paraphrased, just paraphrasing, so there are a lot of activities to choose from. But if there is an empathic response, he will say, you seem to love living there. So the pharmacist realized that the patient is so happy and like the living in this village. So he said, you seem to love living there. So the pharmacist showed that he does feel what the patient feels. يعني بمعنى آخر هو صح عارف إنه هو حب المكان، أوكي، لهيك حكاله إنه صح في activities كتير تعيدها، بس ضاف عليها إنه أنا عارف إنك أو أنا عارف أو حاس أو شايف إنك أنت حبيت المكان، فحمل الفيلينج أو عبر عن الفيلينج الفارماسيست بالإضافة للكونتنت إنه هو في activities كتير، هاي صبتها اسمها empathic response غير عن البارافريز. أوكي. Other attitudes or message must be conveyed to the patient. In addition to using empathic responses, first, you must be genuine or sincere in the relationship. For example, if you do not have the enough time or if you are busy, it may be necessary to tell a patient that you do not have the time right now to discuss an issue in detail, but will telephone or set an appointment for when you are not so busy. Less harm to the relationship than if you had said, I'm listening, while non-verbally conveying hurry or impatience. So if you tell the patient to come back another time or on telephone, you will help men. This is absolutely better than listening to him or trying to show him that you are listening, but actually you do not listen to him well. Okay, the second point, show respect for and acceptance of the patient as an autonomous, worthwhile person. What does this mean? Look at this example. For example, they will be more likely to tell you they do not understand regimen directions if they know you will not think them stupid. If we think that another will judge us negatively, we feel less willing to reveal ourselves. يعني بدنا نشعرهم إنه يعني نخليهم يعني يحسوا إنه عادي يسألوا أي سؤال مهما كانت سخافته، لأنهم إذا سألوا أي سؤال أو حسوا إنه إحنا بننظر لسؤالهم كسخف أو إنه سخيف هذا السؤال، فهم راح يتجنبوا إنهم يسألوا هذا السؤال. فبس هي بدك تحاول تشعرهم بالacceptance دائما والريسبكت لأي سؤال بينطرح منهم مهما كان بسيط أو سخيف. Okay, emotional responses to illness. Now, feelings of fear, frustration, and vulnerability are an inevitable components of coping with illness. So sometimes if the patient feel of fear or sometimes weakness because of their diseases or illnesses, so this will affect the communication between the pharmacist and the patient. Patients are always want to know their fears and concerns are understood. يعني هم دائما بيحسوا إنهم هم بحاجة إنه حدا يفهمهم ويشعر شعورهم. Okay, so they just want or like someone else to feel as they feel. Pharmacists may hesitate to respond to patient expressions of emotions because just the pharmacist think that I'm not a psychologist. يعني أحيانا بحكي لك الصيدلاني أنا يعني مش طبيب نفسي، حدا ثاني يعني ممكن إنه يشكي له، لكن بنعرف إحنا دائما المريض بيحاول إنه في الصيدلية إنه يشكي لنا لحتى يعني خلينا نحكي يحس إنه إحنا شاعرين شعوره. The fact that patients confident in you means they want you to know about their experiences. Failure to acknowledge or understand is in fact damaging to the relationship. إذا إحنا فهمناهم أو وصلنا لهم إنه إحنا يعني don't care أو إنه مش مختصين إنه نسمع لك أو مش حاملين شعوره، إذا وصلته هاي الفكرة فهاي أكيد رح تخلي العلاقة يعني مش كويسة بين الطرفين. Okay, here in this slide, we will talk about the advantages of empathy on a pharmacist's relationships with patients. So, what is the positive effects on the relationship? First, come to trust you as someone who cares about their welfare. بصير يحسوا إنك أنت يعني واحد مهتم فيهم. Understand their own feelings more clearly. Alleviate the patient's sense of isolation because of his disease or illness. Facilitate the patient's own problem solving ability. يعني بتحسسهم إنه بتسهل عليهم إنهم يحلوا مشكلتهم لما بحسوا إنه في حدا شاعر معهم. Okay. Here we have a case study. We have to understand the case study well because there are many responses to this case study which are different from each other. Okay, so let's begin with the case study. Your patient, Mr. Raymond, talks about his physician. شو بيحكي؟ I have been to Dr. Johnson several times because I heard he was a good doctor, but he just doesn't seem to care. I have to wait endlessly in the waiting room, even with an appointment. Then when I do get to see him, he rushes in and out so fast. I don't have a chance to talk to him. Oh, he's pleasant enough. I just get the feeling he doesn't have time to talk to me. سمعان عن هذا الفيزيشن إنه كويس، ينتظره كثير حتى بموعد، بس يدخل عليه بكون مستعجل، ما بيحس إنه هو يعني بيعطيه الوقت الكافي يعني يحكي المريض عن حالته. بيحكي لك إنه أوكي بس هي المشكلة بس إنه هي إنه ما في time to talk to him. Okay, so what is the response of the pharmacist? There are many responses. We will take the first response which is called judging response اللي هو الحكمي اللي فيه حكم. Judging or evaluating another's feelings. Okay, we tell patients in various ways that you shouldn't. For example, you shouldn't feel discouraged or frustrated. Okay. You shouldn't worry. You shouldn't question their treatment by other health professionals. الآن يعني زي كأني بخاطب المريض إنه لا لازم ما تحس هيك، لا لازم ما تقلق، لازم ما أوكي فاهمين الأسلوب كيف بكون الجادجينج؟ So, any message from you that indicates you think patients are wrong or bad or that they shouldn't feel the way they do will indicate that it is not safe to confide in you, okay? يعني إذا بنحكي لهم إنه لا لازم ما تفكر هيك، يعني خلينا نحكي بتحاول تقنعهم إنك تفكيرك خاطئ، هذا الإشي بيأثر على العلاقة بيناتكم. إذا أنت حكمت عليه إنه هو خاطئ أو إنه هو بفكر تفكير نيجاتيف وإنه ما لازم يشعر بهاي الطريقة، هاي الجادجينج ريسبونس مش محبب. Okay. Another responses to the previous example like you have to understand that Dr. Johnson is a very busy man. He probably doesn't mean to be abrupt. Or another response like Dr. Johnson is a very good physician. I'm sure he gives patients the best care possible. Okay, these two responses show the patient that he is wrong about his idea he took on his physician. يعني زي كأننا بنحكي له إنك هو مشغول فعلا بس هو كويس الطبيب، فأنت هون بتوصل للمريض إنه تفكيرك عنه أو الفكرة اللي أنت وصلت ليها عنه لا خاطئة. So these responses indicate that you thought Mr. Raymond was wrong or that he misperceived the situation. In either case, بغض النظر شو كان الموقف أو الرد, the judgment was conveyed that he shouldn't feel as he does. وإحنا حكينا إنه هذا الأسلوب ما بنحبه. So the judging response is unfavorable. Okay. The second response is called advising response. As pharmacists, we must give patients advice on their medication regimens. That is part of our professional responsibility. The advising role may not be appropriate in helping a patient deal with emotional or personal problems. The best source of a problem solution resides within the patient. يعني صح احنا مطلوب منا نعمل advising للpatient, لكن دائما advising في مجال اللي هو medication regimens and how to take his medication, مش بمواضيع المختصة بالpersonal problems أو بالemotional problems. Okay? It is disrespectful of us to feel we can offer a quick solution to another's personal concern, conveys to patients that we do not perceive them as competent to arrive at their own decisions. So it is a bad idea to tell the patient, like, I have the solution to your problem, do that, and like this, okay? So this may affect the communication and the confidence between you and the patient. يعني بمعنى آخر إحنا ما بنحاول نحكي لهم اعمل هيك وسوي هيك, يعني ما نعطيهم الكويك سوليوشن. يعني هو بالنسبة له هي مشكلة كبيرة, personal أو emotional feeling negative طبعا, وهو يعني ماخذ من تفكيره, لكن أنت بكل بساطة قاعد بتقترح عليه إنه يعمل هيك وهيك وهيك. يعني أنت بتحسسه وكأنه الحل إجا من عندي مش من عندك, يعني حسسته بضعف شخصيته إنه أنت ما قدرت توصل للحل لوحدك, أنا اللي وصلت لك, أنا اللي وصلت لك, أو اللي يعني طرحته عليك. Okay, we will continue here with the advising response. Relying on others for advice may keep patients dependent, seeing others as the source of problem solving. ممكن يعني خلينا نحكي من جهة أخرى, بعض البيشنتس يصيروا dependent, ما يفكروا بحلول من تلقاء نفسهم. In the example with Mr. Raymond, response from the pharmacist like, tell him how you feel about the way he treats patients, otherwise find a different physician. يعني أنت بتحكي له إنه احكي له, عبر له عن مشاعرك إنك أنت متضايق منه, أو بتروح لك على دكتور ثاني. أوكي, هاي طبعا this is a quick advice and it is disrespectful. أوكي, طبعا السوليوشن هذا السريع اللي احنا اوجدناه, okay, it is a complex problem in the eyes of Mr. Raymond, but just to you it is an easy or a silly problem that has an easy solution. Assisting them in identifying sources of help they can call on may be an appropriate way to help patients. يعني أنت تحاول إنه يعني تفرجيهم أو ممكن هم يعرفوا إيش الحلول الممكنة, طريقة هاي لأنك تساعدهم إياها, مش إنك تعطيهم الحل المباشر من عندك. Suggesting alternatives for consideration may also helpful. ممكن نعطيهم بدائل بس ما إحنا نختار لهم إياها. Okay, in this slide there are some examples of responses from the pharmacist, like what I think you should do is, let me suggest, it would be best if you for you if, why not take a different approach, if I were you I would, the best solution is. These are examples on responses that should be avoided. They are all called advice response and should be, as I said, avoided. As I said previously in the previous slides, these responses should be avoided because in our eyes as pharmacists, it is a quick response or a quick solution for a silly problem in our eyes, but in the patient eyes, it is a big problem. So do not use such solutions. Okay. I am done with the lecture for today. That's all. I will meet you inshallah on Wednesday at 7 o'clock I will not discuss the whole lecture as I made last time. I will just answer if there is any if there are any questions by students. Thank you. See you inshallah on Wednesday.